Okay. They can now hear us. We're ready.
Okay, great. Great. We're going to call to order the Community Development Corporation. Sorry, do we have our attorney on the line, Amber? Ashley?
She's on.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. We're going to call to order our Community Development Corporation meeting Thursday, April 9th, 2020 at 10 a.m. I guess 10:08 a.m. If we could start off with roll call. Barry, you want to start us off?
Yep. Barry Duck-Ambry. Here.
Pat?
Pat Sheehan here.
Rebecca?
Rebecca Thompson.
Okay, Mike Dyson. That's 4 folks, and that's a quorum, so that'll allow us to continue. Amber and Ashley, if any of the other directors join in the meeting, would you make sure you let us all know? Great, thanks. We'll move to public comments. Any citizen wanting to address RCDC not on an item not on the agenda?
We have no one from the public.
No one from the public. Okay. Well, then we will move to the consent agenda, which is discussion and possible action on the minutes from March 13th, 2020 meeting. Do we have, did everybody get a copy of those?
Yes.
We're going to go with yes. Right on. Thanks, Pat.
Yep.
And then the last thing I'm going to ask there, does anybody have any thoughts, changes, comments on anything that they may need changed or? Nope. We're all good.
No.
Well,
Yep.
Can I get a motion then to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
We've got a motion from
Second.
Barry. Do we have a second? And a second from
Second.
Pat.
Pat.
Any thoughts or comments on them? Nope. All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, the minutes are adopted. Thank you, everybody. And then we'll move on to regular agenda item number 3, discussion and possible action on establishing a grant program for businesses inside the city limits of the city of Rollingwood and to earmark $100,000 for the program. The idea here, guys, is I'm sure not lost on anybody. There are businesses within our city that are hurting, not unlike a lot of businesses across the rest of the country and certainly throughout the state and county. The idea here, a number of other jurisdictions in the state of Texas have, I say jurisdictions, economic development corporations like ours, have instituted programs similar to kind of an SBA type grant program. Some obvious caveats there, differences there, but the idea being that we have some money and we are charged as a body with putting it to work to provide for economic development, both preserve and develop the greater commercial economic capacity of our city. So the idea here is we know we have some monies. We haven't had anybody come to us with projects, and this seems like about the best project we could possibly come up with at this point in time. So the idea would be to earmark $100,000 as the item suggests, and then as the materials also provided in your packet suggest, to allow businesses to apply for these grants, and assuming they meet these thresholds, we would award grants up to, but not to exceed $10,000. Megan, are you on?
Oh,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Barry.
The only question I had regarding the grant was if they're also able to get like the actual SBA grants or payroll grants and some of those other items that the federal government has outlined, or are we expecting, like, that's a little bit of a double dip? is there any expectation of like helping those who basically don't qualify? Because a lot of people may not qualify for those either, and so I didn't know how we wanted to handle those.
Sure. So in your meeting packet, there's a fairly robust, what I think is a really robust, actually, performance agreement.
Is it in there? Because if so, I missed it. That's why I was asking.
So to put it bluntly for you, no, that I don't believe that's specifically addressed. Not in those terms. But what? And Megan, are you on?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure if I'm saying anything that isn't 100% accurate, if you wouldn't mind just jumping in and correcting me on it.
Certainly.
As I understand this, they have to meet the obligations, or well, they have to meet the covenants and duties rather under Article 5. Is that correct?
I'm looking at Article 5 really quick.
Okay.
But I believe that would be correct. Those would be your, yes.
Right. And so specifically
conditions and covenants on the performance under that agreement.
Right. And so under item 1, what they have to provide to us, it does not note in here, whether or not they have to disclose whether they are receiving additional monies, support monies from, say, SBA or other federal or state programs that Barry has suggested. Megan, I know that you guys at your firm have handled similar agreements to this for other jurisdictions. Have any of your other jurisdictions had these types of conversations?
They have. Some of them are still deliberating on it. I think they're really waiting to see what's going to come in.
Okay. So
and make a determination based on need.
Okay, that makes a really good, it brings up a really good point. And so us approving this today as a project, let's just talk about that in process really quickly. If we as a body today approve this in substance as a project, the process then goes that this document would then, in our approval, and I guess a recommendation of sorts, would then go to the city council. The city council it has to approve our project, and they may approve it with caveats, and they may approve it and trust the direction that RCDC is taking this. And then we have 2 public hearings. Is that correct? Or public notices rather?
2 readings of the resolution.
2 readings of the resolution. So that would be not one, does not count today, right? Or it does?
Right. This is just to establish the program. And then if you all approve it, then it would be brought to the city council where they would have the first reading of the resolution on the 15th.
And then we would come back for the second reading of the resolution on which day?
On April 30th. And so ideally we would have a list of projects or for you all to approve. You all would meet on the 30th, and then the city council would meet after you and approve the projects. First do a second reading of the resolution and then approve the projects that you all approved.
So for process there, if we adopt this today, we put it out to the public and have them submit their paperwork as outlined, right? And then as a body, we would review this. Well, I guess it would be kind of in a holding pattern, assuming that the city council on the 15th approved this as a project. During that time frame, these applications would be coming in. RCDC would be taking a look at them. We as RCDC would then approve which projects to support on the 30th, say the morning of the 30th, and then the city council would be meeting sometime after, either late morning or afternoon or evening on April 30th. Is that a full understanding, Amber, Ashley?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Barry, does that,
back to my initial point.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it does. But the only worry is, so I mean, it's $100,000. That sounds great, but that's only 10 businesses, and I just want to
right.
maybe as part of the vetting, we look through this to make sure that I think urgency of need maybe or something like that should be taken into account, especially if someone else if they're receiving outside funding. I would hate to give $10,000 to someone, and this is not a real example, that got $250,000 from the federal government, and then we,
Right.
by extinguishing that $10,000, we killed a business off that would otherwise not have been would have been viable with the $10,000, and that's my only concern.
I couldn't agree more with the idea that need needs to be the priority here. Right, it's probably the heaviest weight that a business can put on the scale. So, excuse me. I guess, pardon me. I guess to Amber and maybe Megan, how do we put this together in such a way that the application, as it's coming back to us, accurately and effectively demonstrates the needs of a business?
Megan, do you have an idea of how other communities, I'm sure this is not unique to our community, how are other communities dealing with establishing criteria that would show urgency and a special need for these funds?
You know that it has really, I believe, fallen with the discretion of the program administrator in making that determination based on the documents that are being submitted. If you're requiring them, like in this program, you're requiring them to submit their ad valorem tax receipts for 2019 and the sales tax receipts for 2020 for February. Those tools can be utilized for the executive director and the board to make a determination on prioritizing if you feel like more documentation is necessary, or if you want to request more specific questions to be answered, those could certainly be plugged into the program.
Okay, I mean, I think that makes sense to me.
I mean, if you want to ask
the
them,
vetting process.
right? If you want to ask them to submit documentation to show what they've submitted for SBA or anything like that, you can include that as well.
Maybe even just a checkbox to see have you also applied for any like SBA loans or relief similar, right? If yes, which ones and in what amounts or something along those lines. Yeah, I'd say I don't think that's a bad idea. And just to be clear, I don't think that on its face would necessarily disqualify a business, but it certainly needs to be taken into consideration when we're considering prioritizing needs.
Okay, then I'm good. I don't want to hold it up either for this. So if we can't get it in for some reason, I think we still should race ahead as quickly as possible. So.
Okay. Rebecca, Pat, do you guys have thoughts on this?
Well, I would think that, you know, we're doing grants that do not have to be repaid, correct?
That's correct.
Well, it seems like we should have some way to try to measure, you know, the greatest need of the applicants if we have several we have to rank.
Right.
That
I suspect. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, that, you know, I think we should be looking at, you know, sales tax revenue and employee retention would be the items that would be important to Rolling Wood.
Right. And just to be clear, employee retention is to ensure that they are continuing with the level of service, right? So one of the things, and Megan, right, as body, we have to emphasize, growth of a business or growth of commercial activity in the city.
Because of There are
Broad.
provisions that allow for you to look at new and expanded business development, and that can include retention of employees, especially in this
Great.
situation we're in. If you've
Great.
had to,
Okay.
if businesses have been able to expand, are they doing curbside? Are they doing delivery? Are they expanding their web presence and utilizing online ordering? All those types of business development can be considered.
Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
My only question was around outreach for this. Do we know how many businesses qualify in Rollingwood for this? And is it possible to directly reach out to them once this is ready and to say, here's what you need to do?
I don't have that answer. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, great questions. We do have contact information that Bowie helped us put together when we were putting together the community, I guess, a directory of sorts. If you recall that, Amber?
Yes, we have the list. I don't know how many would qualify, basically comparing the list of who doesn't qualify against all of our businesses. But that's something I can get together.
Great. And I think that'll be obviously critical information as we move through a process, assuming we adopt this as a project, in concept as a project, I suppose. It'll be critical for us to understand, I guess, the total need. Inopportune time for
that's not me.
lawn mowing.
Yep.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, well, I tell you what, if there's no additional thoughts or comments on this, obviously there's going to be a lot more going into it. This is just the first step, just to be really clear that there's still going to be a lot of other people looking at this. Most notably, the City Council will take a look at this, and this will come back in front of RCDC along with potential applicants. So this isn't our one shot, so to speak. This is the introduction to the process. And then Megan, do you want to talk to us about very briefly, just help the directors understand why each one of these is considered an individual project, and that in fact each grant would be considered an individual project?
Certainly. I believe the way the program is being, because of the timelines as well as the way the program is being put together, it is such an all-encompassing program that in order to help provide authority for each individual project, because as y'all have discussed at this point in time, not knowing the needs of each individual entity who will apply as well as the total number, and there probably will be more need than supply, or more demand than what can be addressed, that these need to come back before you all, allow you all the opportunity to individually review and authorize the expenditures of these funds.
Perfect. Okay, well, with that, the other thing that we overlooked on here is making sure we had a budget review. We'll make sure we have our budget on the agenda for our follow-up meeting, which ideally will be April 30th before the City Council meeting, just so that everyone is comfortable knowing the funds that RCDC has available, and how much of those monies are being allocated to this program. if there's no other thoughts or comments, I'd
Mayor,
ask if we had a, yeah, go ahead, Amber.
I did have one. Tagging on to your budget comment, I did touch base with Abel and made sure that we felt comfortable with this $100,000 number, and that said, we will bring a budget amendment to the next meeting for your consideration.
Perfect.
But also, as I was thinking about this program, when we put it together, we put a deadline for the applicants as April 23rd. And the idea was to roll it out to them quicker, but maybe they need more time. As I'm thinking about that, I'd like to have the board weigh in on what they think.
I'd certainly like to keep the window open as long as plausible, right, and possible. I suppose. If we're going to have that meeting on the 30th, I guess it depends on how much time the directors would, feel they need to properly assess the applications that have come in and make a fully informed decision on that April 30th meeting. And I guess in truth, it's entirely possible that we take all of this and phase it out so that basically you have your first phase for April 30th, say, or April, submit by April 26th, 7th, 8th, whatever that day is. And RCDC will award or intends to award, 60, 75%, whatever that number is, of the monies during phase one, and then open it up for a phase two afterwards. I suspect that anybody that didn't hear about the program, through phase one will certainly hear about it for phase two. So that might catch anybody that, there's a lot going on in people's lives right now, believe it or not. So especially business owners. So maybe that's a way to think about it. The other thing, if we're able to get this over to Leslie Bassman and Brian Rash, they usually do a really good job about getting it out into the local publications. And if we can just ask them if they wouldn't mind helping us get this message out in a meaningful way, that might help. Anybody else have thoughts on timing there?
No, this is Barry. I mean, I just think the sooner the better. I'm fine with phasing it, but I think we need to do something quickly. I mean,
sure, I agree with that.
Urgency. Yeah.
Pat or Rebecca, do you have thoughts on maybe phasing it, which would allow a potential window, and if so, any particular amount?
I mean, I think it'd be nice to do it on a case-by-case basis. If there's a business out there that really needs it right away and that urgency is there and it prevents them from going out of business, then maybe that should be under consideration. I don't know if that's possible to do it on a case-by-case, but I feel like that might be ideal.
Yeah, no, I would agree there. Just to be clear, when I mention phase it, I don't mean give a business 75% of its award. I mean award 75,000 out of the $100,000 program that's been set aside. That's more what I was referring to. So as that need came in for a business, there are funds readily available. Just for the sake of clarity on my side.
The timeline, just to clarify, the timeline that we have scheduled would be council would consider this on April 15th. We would, if it's approved, we'll roll out the program on April 16th. That gives them a week to get their documentation. It's not much to round up, and they probably already have it together if they apply for some SBA funding. Then it would be due to staff by the 23rd. Staff would organize it and submit to you all. I'm sure we could turn it around the next day. So you all would have the 24th and then tentatively meet on the 30th to decide.
I don't have a calendar pulled up in front of me, but is the 23rd, I suspect, is going to creep up on us quickly. Do you think the 23rd is enough time?
That's my question.
Yeah. I would, sorry,
We can push it to the 30th.
bear with me. I'm going to pull up my calendar. Sorry about that. Well, if you push to the 30th, we won't have time to review it ahead of our meetings.
Well,
not all of it.
We could push the meeting we tentatively scheduled for the 30th to May 7th. We could just push everything a week back.
This goes, I think, to Barry's point. The sooner we can get it all approved and distributed, the better. So I'd like to keep the 30th if we can, and then I'll tell you what. How about if you guys get it for? I see why you picked the 23rd so that you could turn it around to us by the 24th. We could review over the weekend.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think you're gonna have to stick to that. And that gives us the 27th, 28th, and 29th. If we need supporting documentation for anybody that's applied, we will have the opportunity to reach back out to them the 27th, 28th, and 29th and get the supplementals to make a final determination for the 30th.
Okay, great.
Okay, and then just to make sure,
yeah.
great, just to make sure that we're getting the word out. Obviously, we'll post through our social media channels, but let's go ahead. And I know we should be waiting for approval before we announce this as an official project. But is there any problem with us reaching out to the local papers and just letting them know that, hey, RCDC is considering this as a project, so that the buzz ideally is already out there, so that folks can maybe even start putting their paperwork together in anticipation of approval of this as a project next week?
Yes, I think we can definitely roll that out to the press and explain the process, that it still has to be approved by council, but step one's already been achieved. It's been approved by RCDC.
Great.
So,
and we'll just I'll mea culpa with the council. That was not intended to put any pressure on them, but to approve the project. But just the idea that, again, a level of making sure, to Rebecca's point, that this gets out there as wide as it can, as soon as it can. Okay. With that, do we have any other thoughts or questions? If not, can I be bold enough to ask for a motion to approve establishing a grant program for businesses inside the city limits of the city of Rollingwood and earmark $100,000 for the program?
Motion to establish the RCDC business development program to save businesses in the Rollingwood city limits, or to help them.
Yep. Do we have a second?
Second.
I think you're.
Pat Sheehan.
We got a second from Pat Sheehan. It sounds like Barry's kids are in favor of it. I like it.
They are. Yeah.
Good. Raising. That's good. All right. Well, if we've got a motion in a second, do we have any comments? no further discussion, then I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Megan, Amber, does this need to be a record vote? Should we make it a record vote?
I would suggest doing a roll call vote. Yes, that just makes it much simpler for purposes of identifying.
You got it. Okay. We're gonna go. We're gonna start, ladies first. Rebecca,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Mike Dyson votes yes. Great. Unanimous then. RCDC has established a grant program for businesses inside the city limits of the city of Rollingwood, and we've earmarked $100,000 for the program. Directors, I want to thank you very much for spending a little bit of your, what is today? Thursday morning with us. As I'm sure, I'll tell you what, days and times are getting pretty fuzzy at this point.
Yes, they are.
So thank you all very much for the time and the consideration. If you have any thoughts or comments, probably the best way to do it is to direct it to Ashley if there are comments that need to be directed to the entire board. That way nobody runs afoul of any open meetings concerns. And then you'll also hear from Amber and or Ashley regarding establishing our next meeting. Is that fair? Amber, Ashley?
Yes.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting if there's nothing else. All right.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, bye.
You too. Stay safe. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Are you all still meeting?